Thank you for bearing with me. I chose to skip last week's live. I normally go live once a week, but this time every Tuesday, I was sick, which informs today's talk about some tips from my heart, from my home, about what to do when big family mom is sick. And it happened last week after 2 years of actually not really totally worrying about it, but just taking cautions. Finally, the big C, the big little C, really, for us anyway. Not to make light of something that is serious for some people, for sure. But I'm in the demographic, and so are my kids, that I wasn't too concerned when coronavirus 19 came to our home. Um, didn't even know it had come when it came. We just thought it was another cold because we've had a few colds over the last 2 years and taken the tests and negative, negative, negative. But we finally took it this time just out of curiosity because my husband got it first, and kind of like slow moving lava that happens, right? Sometimes, especially in a big family, it's like a little slow domino effect as it moves its way through the family. And it finally got to me just in time for my 44th birthday last weekend. And I wasn't really too concerned about me, especially once the test came back immediately positive. Like the positive was before the test came back as functioning, like the two lines. And I thought, wow, this is weird. Usually this is a pregnancy test kind of moment, and I'm not pregnant right now, but it was, I had to take a picture because I was just like, I'm not pregnant, because you could see right on the test. Anyway, you know what kind of test it is. So I got it, and I wasn't too worried about me, but I was more concerned for my baby. Corey's 9 months old now, and because Omicron's more upper respiratory, as I understand it, there's been more pediatric intake at our like the big hospital here in the capital city of Canada where I live. Just like not a lot of numbers, but statistically significant enough that I was not worried about me or any of the kids. It really was just like a come and a go cold for them. But it did take a little bit longer for me and my husband, which is I'll talk about in a second, the tips, because I ended up using them all this last week. Yeah, baby had a fever last Sunday night, just for the night, but it was gone by the morning, and then she was right as rain. No coughing, no nothing. It's been very residual for me and my husband, sneezing, coughing, whatever. But what happened was, like the fever, the cold itself was pretty quick. Like you'd think like standard cold, like, okay, it's gonna, I feel like a bag of rocks for a couple of days, but I'm okay, I'm functional. But it was a little slower than that. And I just felt so tired last week and my head felt foggy. I just like the simplest decisions, I was like, am I gonna cry? Like I just was very fragile, and I just felt like my capacity to just handle the stress of life was low. Maybe it's because it was my birthday and just other family stuff. Sometimes when it rains, it pours. So, tip number one is to know when to take a full stop break. So, I did. I took the week off. I took the week off because, without getting too much into it, it was an emotional week for me as well. When you're just being sick with a cold, any kind of cold, um, but this particular cold has been, I just want to be careful what I say, like just because there's other people involved. This brought up a lot. There's like many families, COVID has strained fault lines that were already in relationships. I'm not going to get into the details because it's kind of not the point. The point is, I was like feeling it physically, obviously, just, going through a sickness, and it happens. And it's good to have a game plan for what to do when. But I was also getting a whole other front to that storm, a double whammy emotionally, because COVID itself, like I said, has been a tipping point, the final kind of straw in some relationships. And so it brought up all of that stuff. And it happened to be my birthday as well, which brought up that stuff as well. So it was just like, it was a triple. So I decided to take the week off, even though physically I could drag my bones around. I don't often call a whole week. So I just said, at homeschool, we're taking the whole week off. And just everything that we can cut. And we did. We observed like a 10-day caution. Like we didn't go to Awana last week. Turns out it got canceled because there were so many leaders that were sick anyway that they couldn't even run it. So my kids didn't feel so bad. And we just like cleared our calendar, and I took the week off from homeschooling. I was still like operational making meals and so on. But this is where my routine really gets put to the test. I'm so grateful for it because the meal plan was already on the list. I'm pointing at it right now. My kids are already in a flow to the day. So we just said, it's gonna be like a week of Saturdays. We're just gonna do our Saturday routine. The day one that I called it off, it was like a pajama day for me, which I don't normally stay in my pajamas. But I'm sick when. So it's just knowing when to slow it right down is tip number one. And sometimes it's not just because you're the physical sickness. You're like, no, I'm really like, I'm not even safe to be at home. You need to call your husband over from work or, whatever that's going to look like for you. But it's also knowing when you're just emotionally, it's just like, I'm really dragging myself here and I need to just give myself some recoup. I mean, I joke. The only time big family moms get some time off is when they're sick or having a baby. I know that's not totally strictly true, and I say it somewhat tongue in cheek, but it can feel that way, right? Getting a break can be easier said than done, and sometimes it's the way you get it. So I decided to stretch my recovery time out because there was more to it just than a virus. There was also just emotional stuff. It was a tender week, and I just like maybe when you're emotionally stressed out, it can depress your immune system as well. So I gave myself a whole week. So let's just take homeschool off because really, in the grand scheme of life, 1 week is not going to derail everybody's futures and prospects, and just to keep it in perspective. Now, I'm not talking today about what if it's prolonged, like we're talking chronic illness, disease, stuff like that. This is more the short-term stuff where you're like, okay, the storm has hit, right? It's a puke storm. It's a head cold. It's a chest cold, whatever it is. Maybe it's coronavirus, whatever it is. It's here, but it's going to pass. Then gauge for yourself how much time you really need to step it right back and keep everything like as simple as possible. At first, I thought we would just do math, which is usually my first strategy to still keep because we homeschool, to keep the homeschool going. Math is like my bare minimum when I'm couch schooling and I'm like on the couch all day in my pajama and I'm still functional. I don't need to call my husband home for safety reasons. And I do have older teens now, but like in the earlier years when there was no real babysitting help from the kids for, safety reasons, then yeah, got to know when to call in the cavalry and call hubby home. And he works as a handyman. So he doesn't get paid sick days. So I try to keep those to a minimum. But my gauge is, of course, is safety. Like, can I even function? Okay, let me check. I wrote this down on my phone. Number 2, right? So I slowed everything down. At first, I thought I'd take 2-3 days off. And I decided, you know what? Let's just take the whole week off because of the emotional side of it as well. And I didn't know how long it was going to take. And because perspective, it's not going to ruin their whole lives if mom takes like a PD week, a PD, not just PD day, but a PD week. And I felt bad because it was the third week of September. Just got back started. I always start in September. And then boom, we're taking a week off. But again, perspective, right? In the grand scheme of life, it's better that I nurture my body, support my body with, good food, good water, rest. But also I needed some emotional space because just the fact that it was coronavirus, like I said, brought up a lot of other very, very heavy emotions for me. So, I did like just super simple things with the kids, and my husband did stay home for some of that time. So I was just texting him instructions. And like I said, because I have a flow to our day, even our weekends, it's not super strict on the weekend. Like we roll more easily, but there's a meal plan. There's a structure to the day. And then he would just text me if he had a question or, quite frankly, figure it out because he's perfectly capable father of 11 children. We're not noobs. We were once and no idea what we're doing. But we're not noobs now. Another tip is to get the older children to help. And older is relative to where you're at in your big family mom, life stage. And when my oldest was maybe 10 or 11, but she could still read for 20 minutes with a younger, like a toddler or something, right? Or I could just set them in a safe space where I'm kind of like there on the couch. And watching the older kid who's really watching the little kid and so on. So it's use the help that you've got. Sometimes big family moms can feel bad employing the help of older children with younger children because there can be stereotypes or our own fears of using our bigger kids and they're not getting paid to babysit. But it's a real opportunity for them to serve. And actually, sometimes you can see what your kids can do. My oldest, who's 17, was away for 2 weeks and she missed this whole thing. She was in Cape Cod with her grandparents. And so didn't have my usual right hand oldest daughter. She has 6 brothers after her. I mean, they're all perfectly capable as well. But my 6-year-old daughter, so she had to wait 12 years for a sister, she really rose to the occasion because she didn't have big sister Eden being the big sister. They share a room. She was making the bed. I didn't know she could make it that well. She did a dynamite job. And sometimes those moments when we reach out to our children and ask them for help is an opportunity for them to grow and an opportunity for us as moms to see what they can do. Like maybe they can do more than we thought. And that's a good thing because we're preparing them. Spoiler alert, they're future adults. So learning how to serve others when they're ill or a bit under the weather and they're just, not well, it's a great life opportunity. And just, thank you so much, honey. Gave her lots of love. And, I think at the end of the week, I think you gave her like a special treat or something just to acknowledge. And because I saw her and I saw the extra things she was doing, sometimes without even asking. And I thought, wow, thank you, God, for showing me what 6-year-old Jubilee is capable of doing. Because sometimes it's easy to lean only on the oldest and kind of forget about the middles, right? Because they're always in the middle. They're perpetual middle children. All right, my last point here. I think I pretty much covered everything. There's more tips that I could give. I didn't even get into like nourishing your body and so on. I just touched on it, but I just gave myself grace and space and employed the help that God had put in front of me for such a time as this. Trusting is okay. I wasn't using them. That we're a family and we help each other out, right? I serve them, and there are times when they rise up and call me blessed and say, "Mom, I'll help you." Whether it's just can you watch the little 2-year-old for a couple of minutes, take him out to the backyard and push him on a swing, right? Instead of me taking on everything and burning myself out, or worse, because when you're sick, it's like the way I see it is like God just like, slow down, girl. Slow down. You're only human. You're only made of dust and flesh and blood. And it's okay to take some time off, even if you still have to keep a few things going. So I'll finish up by saying this. My routine really was a lifesaver. The fact that kids were used to it, they're used to a certain flow to the day, things that we do in the morning, things we do in the afternoon. So having that structure in place, having a meal plan already on the fridge, it just made it so much smoother. And even though it felt like a week of Saturdays, it wasn't like crazy. Like sometimes summer vacation, if it has no borders, no boundaries, no structure at all, that can get stressful really fast. But my husband was able to just, the days that he stayed home, slide into my role. And I mean, he didn't do it perfect the way I would do it, but he did it really good because he had something to slide into. So if you don't really feel like you have a good handle on a routine, I have linked below this video my Big Family Home course where I break it all down, that the worksheets show you exactly how I went from not knowing at all how to do this to doing it now so that I can like hand the baton when I'm sick temporarily and the whole house doesn't fall apart without me being there to run the show. I've got my apron on now because you might still hear, I can hear it in my own head that I still a bit stuffed up. But I'm back in the game this week. We're back to homeschool. We just picked up where we left off. We're like the schedules were already made for our homeschool. We just kind of changed the date and kept going. And I'm really glad I took that week off because I needed it. I needed it for my body and I needed it for my soul, for me. And God knew that even though it went against everything in me to take time off in September as a homeschool mom, it did. And it was good. So what's my last thing I was going to say? Oh, yes. Yeah, I just did want to say that the kids really are fine and it came and went. And of course, that was emotional too. They're like, okay, like everything in the world came to a stop for 2 years for this, for a cold, and like a lot of conversations to be had and so on. So I hope this has helped you, giving you some tips. If anything, just to hear something I really needed to hear in the early days, like it's okay to slow down. You're not, flaking out or failing your children, especially if you homeschool, by giving yourself space and grace and nurture and support for that week. And know when to call in, like I said, the Calvary. Know when it's not safe. You're not emotionally safe. You're not mentally safe. You're not like physically safe. And it's time to call in for help. And yeah, it might just mean your husband has to take some paid time off and trust God to work it all out in the end, because he knows that you need support, that you are only human, and that if you're going to, be back in a couple of days, then you're going to need to stop and really like pull over so you can recharge the batteries. All right. Bless you. I will talk to you later in the group, Big Family Moms, if you're not already in it, link below. And I hope you have a great week. And if this does happen to find you in the midst of being sick, then God bless you to heal and recover very, very quickly.